Hello, creative, and welcome back to the Empowered Creatives podcast, finding confidence between hustle and burnout. I'm your host, Victoria Hines, creative career coach, helping creatives like you navigate those twists and turns in your creative career. I'm so happy to have my guest on this show this week, who's also a friend of mine. Imani Davis is here on this show. So Imani is a writer, producer, and film programmer at the America Cinematheque in Los Angeles. She's actually a recent LA transplant because she used to live in Chicago with moi. And she is passionate about building community and believes that film has the power to educate and engage the masses. Imani earned her Bachelor of Arts in Film Studies at The Ohio State University and also has a really cool Master's of Leadership in Creative Enterprises at Northwestern University. At the American Cinematheque, a nonprofit that believes cinema is a communal experience with the power to entertain, lighten, and inspire, she currently executes on this mission by curating a wide range of films and pairing them with fun, engaging events, which I know she's going to talk about a little bit later on the show. So recently, the American Cinematheque announced the first of its kind Proof of Concept Film Festival, which Imani actually founded and will be overseeing this year. So I'm excited to dive into that, and welcome to the show, Imani.
Thank you. Super excited to be here.
Me too. All right. This is always how I kick off every single episode. It's a big one. What do artists and creatives need to know is possible today?
Oh, yes. That's such a big question. I love talking about, just like the changing landscape for artists and creatives and all the different ways that you can kind of go into things. I think a big thing revolves around reinforcing that no one path is the same. And I think resources like your podcast and other podcasts and videos, masterclasses, panels, anything kind of like geared towards artists and creatives talking about like someone else's path are super helpful to learn from, but not to try and replicate. I think I've found out a lot about that with just like carving out my own path of you don't need to be exactly like Issa Rae, you don't need to be exactly like Shonda Rhimes and like follow exactly what they did because first of all, I'm not them. Second, it's not gonna work because they did it. and that was their path. And I think a lot of the resources there are helpful in gleaning like, oh, like what are they doing that I maybe haven't like thought of in the past that like could work on my path of like, oh, I'm feeling the vibe of that, but not so much as like replicating the path because it's really impossible. You really have to like kind of carve out your own path and like take on the entrepreneurial mindset, which we learned a lot about in masters in my master's program of really putting that hat on and really digging into your passions, what you like, carving out your own path, and being like comfortable in that. So I think that's a step too, is like even just being comfortable in that and like confident in that. I have to kind of like forge my own unique, originalish path.
Oof, that's definitely the second piece of it is learning that not everybody's path is going to look the same as yours, but also realizing like getting the confidence that you're doing the right thing. Like that's a whole other bucket of worms, so to speak. But talking about your path, can you tell us in like a little bit of a nutshell? So I talked about in your bio how you went to college for film studies. But what's your journey been like? Just kind of like in a nutshell from college to now working for American Cinematheque.
Gosh, it's been really unorthodox too. And like again, taking in my own advice of leaning into it and being okay with it. Because I got my bachelor's in film studies from the Ohio State University and always knew that I wanted to be in film. Film was like the thing. I thought I wanted to be a full-time screenwriter. I had a screenwriting concentration in undergrad. quickly found out that I did not want to be a full-time screenwriter. Luckily, I learned that like during college. Still love writing, love like the craft of writing, the craft of screenwriting and writing for the screen, but met people who all I wanted to do was sit behind a computer and write, and they're really good at it. And I was like, I can't compete with people. um, and also like I didn't want to um do that like all the time.
Yeah.
I knew that like talking to people and like talking about films and meeting people and talking about the business of film and things too. I really like the industry kind of talk and being in tune with that. Like even marketing, really like certain things about that with film. And like I think that was a time to, or like more post grad, thinking about small boutique production companies like E24 and Neon who were starting to be like really creative and inventive with film marketing, and really liking that, being like, oh, maybe that's something I'd be interested in. So knew that film was the thing during undergrad, just didn't really know like what was like the entire thing,
Sure.
and there's so much to learn about the industry. So graduating from undergrad, knew that I needed to, not that I needed to, that I wanted to like learn more about creative industries, about film, about all kinds of stuff, and take some time there. So I moved back home to Chicago and was looking for jobs just to kind of bide my time a little bit as I
Yeah.
figured out my had some experience in working for Ohio State's Alumni Association.
Oh.
It was like a marketing kind of like communications internship. And that's a whole story how I fell into that internship. But had some like niche like higher ed alumni experience, and also knew that I didn't want to like pay for my master's degree. So I looked at um higher education like jobs, all the colleges in like the like Chicagoland area, and Northwestern was hiring, Northwestern University in Evanston, and got a job in more of like the alumni relations and development department, and then started working there as a development assistant for the libraries and the Block Museum of Art, which was like really fun. Um, and they had a little cinema at the Block Museum of Art that I like went to like after work and stuff because they had free screenings. But that was a great place to like not only learn more about art and the behind the scenes of art and like funding of like libraries and museums and higher education, especially private institutions. But I also got to pursue my master's degree like part time, and knew that I had a feeling that I was going to go into more of like just a broad communications master's degree. Started looking into the programs that Northwestern had, and they had this amazing newish program called Masters of Science and Leadership for Creative Enterprises. And upon reading said description for said program, I was like, this is like perfect for me. This is exactly what I want to learn more about. It was kind of like a mini MBA for like people in creative industries, and we learned a ton about pitching and persuasion and the economics of creative industries and all different kinds of things. And it was very film and TV focused. There was a
Oh,
lot of other
wow.
people in that, yeah, who wanted to go into film and TV. There are also people in theater and music and dance and just like nonprofit, like cultural institutions, but a lot of film and TV kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it was definitely a grind.
I can imagine. Well, I have a question, real quick question. So while you were working at Northwestern and as well as at some point getting this master's degree, were you also doing other things in kind of the film industry in Chicago?
Yes. So not only was I working full time at Northwestern, on also taking classes part time in my master's degree, I was also doing like extracurricular, like creative projects too.
Sounds like most creatives I know. Yep.
Keep me very busy.
Yeah.
There was short films. I produced my first short film because I got really into producing in that program at Northwestern as I learned more about it. And like what producing was and stuff too. Because I feel like that can be the number one question that people have coming into the film industry is like, wait, what does a producer do?
Yeah.
There's not really experience with it. So got a taste of like all the different kinds of jobs and duties that kind of came with that. I was like, I want to try that out, and just started trying it out with like friends who also wanted to like make films in the city. So I produced my first short film, produced a web series, ended up producing like 2 low budget indie features right before I left Chicago. So was grinding.
Hey there, creative. I have a delightful invitation just for you. Imagine diving even deeper into the incredible world of living your life as an empowered creative, including more tips, tricks, and advice arriving straight into your inbox. Sounds pretty cool, right? Well, guess what? I've got something special brewing, and I don't want you to miss out. Introducing my oh so awesome bi weekly email newsletter. It's a vibrant community bursting with passion, curiosity, and the love of building a creative life. By joining my newsletter, you'll get first access to new promotions and launches, as well as my welcoming voice in your ear every other week. Also, I'll share with you my creative career audit worksheet, a secret tool myself and clients have used during our own career transitions and pivots. So don't miss this opportunity to be my pen pal, as well as deepen your connection with fellow empowered creatives by heading to www.victoriahines.com or following the link in the show notes below. Thank you for being such an incredible listener, and I really look forward to sharing this exciting journey with you through both the podcast and my newsletter. Now, let's dive back into the show. A little bit of a segue before we go back to your journey, because I am curious about how all this led to like your current role that you have. But amidst everything you were doing, which I feel like, and just because I know you, like it's the classic 20s lifestyle of working a full-time job and doing something else and the side hustles, and you just it's like packing everything in. How did you avoid burnout? Like how did you avoid all of the projects just taking you too far to where you had nothing left to give?
Yeah, I definitely did get burnt out. And I feel like I did this to myself kind of in like undergrad too, being involved in like 100 clubs, like organizations. And upon graduating, being like, I'll never do that again. Being like overloaded by stuff. Like, I'm gonna do yoga and like drink green juice. And did it all over again with taking on a bunch of projects, working with a bunch of organizations. And I think, like you said, that 20s mindset is also kind of like as you're growing and looking for opportunities and stuff, it can kind of be this time of like overloading yourself too and not wanting to say no to everything. I feel like that'll be a big piece of advice that you get from things like say yes, like the year of saying yes. And I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine a year of saying yes. Not right now, at least. And yeah, so avoiding burnout was definitely something I tried to like think about a lot during it, but I did get burned out a lot. And I think taking any kind of time that I had that was like just for myself and just focusing on like self-care was really helpful during that time. Because I did it, up until I moved to Los Angeles of being in this kind of like hustle and grind and as many projects as I could like under my belt. I loved collaborating with people. I loved making art and making stuff, but also wanted to grow in my practice, like as a producer, as a writer, as a collaborator. So just any kind of moments that I had, and just focusing on vegging out on my couch for Netflix or going out for for a drink with a friend that I hadn't seen in a while. Like
Yeah.
those were moments. Yeah.
As silly as vegging out in front of Netflix is, I feel like it's still a grounding moment that just kind of pulls you out of the, I don't know, it's almost like the riptide that you've been stuck in for days, weeks, months on end. And yeah,
Yes.
it seems silly, but like, oh, I deeply get that and needing self-care. All of these threads. So like you were working in alumni relations at Northwestern. You were also going after this really incredible master's degree in creative leadership and creative enterprises. Um, you had an undergrad degree in film studies, as well as you were producing a ton of short films in Chicago while you were here. How did all of this culminate into your current role at American Cinematheque?
Yeah. Something else that I was doing, another thing that I was doing in Chicago. I was really getting into the indie like film programming scene in Chicago and was really excited by that. And I think that started with the Block Museum of Art, where they have Block Cinema. If you haven't gone, it's great for all the listeners out there. They have free screenings and very rare screenings of things on 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter.
Ooh,
Mm-hmm.
that's cool.
Yeah, and would bring in all kinds of like scholars and different curators and things to kind of like guest or co-present kind of or intro things to. So really, really awesome programming at the Block. And sometimes they would accompany the exhibitions going on at the time in the museum as well. So really great stuff happening there. And there's a really cool just like micro cinema scene in Chicago with like abandoned storefronts showing like cool things that you haven't seen in a minute, like on a bigger screen, not on the big screen, but on a bigger screen than you want to
Yeah.
like your laptop. And there's doc films in at University of Chicago, which is a film society that's been around for years, and it's student run by U Chicago students, but they also take proposals from the community for series that they want to series of films that people want to program and show like at doc. I learned a ton at doc about programming and building a series of films and how to make it diverse and robust and make sure it has different time periods in it and different directors, different kinds of films. Learned a ton there and submitted different proposals and got some in. Some did not get in. But I learned a ton there and just like went to a bunch of different screenings of stuff. The Music Box is amazing. The Gene Siskel Film Center. So loved that scene and was like, how do I kind of like program and like curate stuff and also like get stuff on screens and gather people and talk about cinema. So we're spending time kind of like getting involved in that scene. Um, the big thing that happened there was I was working with a theater company called Facility Theater, which is located in Humboldt Park. And
Mm-hmm.
they do theater as well as like alternative art, performing art, and all kinds of stuff at Facility. Definitely give them a follow too. And they had just gotten a space in Humboldt Park. And I was like, y'all should show movies here and you should let me show them because they had like a projector and like a like wall. And I'm like, oh, we can like show
Yeah.
and folding chairs. And we did lots of fun stuff there. Like we did like a 420 screening of the film Reefer Madness and got to like do like a public domain screening. We did like a movie musical series that I think is what caught the eye of other folks who I had gotten to connect with through various different screenings in Chicago of like posting about what I was doing and just posting about programming and stuff and like more community centered work around film programming because I had met this amazing woman named KJ, who now works at the Academy in film programming at a Block Museum screening uh, years ago. And I remember she did her intro. She was traveling around with a Barbara Hammer screening series. It was an awesome lesbian experimental filmmaker. who had passed, and they were doing a kind of tribute screening series for her. And she did her intro, and I was like, she's so cool. I want to talk to her. I did, and just went up to her and was like, that was awesome. Like, I want to learn more about what you do, because she had worked at UCLA in the film archives there. And we stayed connected. And I think, yeah, she saw what I was doing, like in Chicago, in terms of like programming and such. Then when the American Cinematheque was like looking to add another film programmer to the team, they were looking for someone with more like community centered experience, someone who maybe like didn't or hadn't had like a full-time position in film programming before. And KJ recommended me, and she put my name in the hat. And I got connected to Gwen, the past deputy director of the American Cinematheque, who had worked there for like 25 years and was amazing. And we just like hit it off on Zoom. And here I am in LA.
Up and moved to LA. Oh, wow. I mean, it goes to show you never know what doors are going to open. And I feel like this goes back to like your original point of like we're all on different paths. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but like I can think back to so many times where I tried to like shove doors open because I just really wanted them to budge and I wanted them to open. And I mean, not in like a mean, obnoxious way, because that's not the sort of person I am, but like there are moments where I was like, but this is the door I want to open. This is the one right here, and I'm gonna wait out here until it opens. And yes, putting yourself out there and creating your own work, and you were finding all of these ways to lean into like the things that you were realizing that you loved, that you enjoyed, that I'm sure were so much work, so much time and energy going into these projects that were probably paying you nothing as well, I'm assuming.
Anything,
Very little.
costing money.
Yeah, yeah. But leaning into those, and they became your calling card that opened up just this incredible door to you. And it's because you weren't afraid to create your own projects and then also post about it and share it
For sure.
with the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was like a point too of, I think there were many points of, what am I doing? How does this all fit together? This feels so random. But it's not. It's your path. And it will probably stick out to someone as like really, really awesome and really, really cool. Like a lot of the film programmers that I've gotten to meet have kind of forged paths for themselves, and that's how they got, the positions that they're in. I know someone who does an awesome like feminist journal of film, has been doing it for like years. She does it online on social media as well as like a physical book, and now she programs for Cannes. uh,
Wow.
yeah, as like a feature film programmer. So lots to learn from like a lot of the film programmers that I've been around, of like, wow, like no one's really like following this like direct.
Yeah, they all made it there in different ways. So you mentioned really early on having an entrepreneurial mindset and how that has deeply related to maybe like the path you're on and some of the successes you've had. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, I think I get that from my parents too. My mom like has always had her own like kind of like side business and hustle, doing like speaking for conferences, and really carving a space out for herself in like the administrative professionals kind of space, and like making herself like a thought leader in that space,
Hmm.
and coaching and all kinds of stuff there. And then my dad has always like had all kinds of businesses and hustles and stuff. So I think I get a lot of it from them, of just going for things, and that they were always really encouraging too, which I'm very fortunate for, of like whatever I wanted to major in. When I wanted to major in film, I've heard horror stories of how people parents react sometimes, and my parents are like, cool, all right. It's very grateful for that. And I think that encouraged me to always be kind of like forward thinking of thinking how I can make a new initiative or make a business, or always thinking about that and about like making of being a thought leader in like some spaces of how can I do that, of what's a new series, what's a new initiative that I can like work on in these spaces that I'm like passionate about, and really make it my own. So, and I still do that to this day, and I think that's how I keep myself so busy, because you never never a shortage of ideas of things that you can do with your time.
Never.
Yeah.
I mean, what you touched on is so key too, because most creative careers, I would say, don't really follow a linear path. And there is a level to which you have to be a self starter or create your own projects or build your own business. And there's very few, I would say, like maybe there was like once a time and place where, an artist could go work for a very specific artistic company for 40, 50 years and quote unquote retire. But I don't personally know any of those people, and I don't can't even name maybe one of those people, and I don't necessarily think that's maybe a super realistic path anymore. So I feel like all artists, like and this is the hard part, like, and I'm sure your master's degree was very different than undergrad. It sounds like your master's degree was a little bit more of that entrepreneurship, but like really leaning into like how do you build your own business, and how do you build a career path that's right for you?
Yes, that is definitely what that master's degree was like all about, was leaning into an entrepreneurial mindset. I think Northwestern does a great job at that too. They have the Farley Center for Entrepreneurship. They have this like initiative called the Garage, where students can like come in and get like stipends and mentorship and advice for businesses if they want to start any kind of business. You can start a nonprofit.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources at Northwestern for like aimed at entrepreneurship. And that mindset has been like really, really helpful, especially being for like in the creative kind of spaces. Cause like you said, yeah, it's not like being a lawyer, you go to law school, you're pre-law, you go to law school, take the bar, you're a lawyer.
Yep. Go work for a firm.
Yep. It's not like that.
Yeah. No. I have another question for you. Like you had mentioned talking about you feel like you've like discovered, and we had talked about this one-on-one before the show, but like you finding a lot about niches and how that's really helped you. And I know I can look at, yes, maybe everything in like your has been centered around film, but you've done so many different roles, aspects, genres, working with different types of companies. Like what has been the process to niche down, and how has that benefited you?
It's still going. Still going. And
Yeah.
it's of trying things out and seeing what fits, of seeing like, oh yeah, I like this, I don't like this. I can see myself doing this, maybe. Let me try this out in this way though. So lots and lots of trying things out and seeing what I even like. And then kind of like drilling down. Like I love researching. Like I will find myself in like a YouTube video, like rabbit hole almost every night. Just like learning. I love like the business of film, like industry, like podcasts and like articles and stuff too. Of just really like consuming whatever knowledge that I can about a different space, and really like finding out about different gaps or different areas that I'm interested in, where it's like, oh, what else is there about this, like in the kind of like film ecosystem? Um, and then either seeing like more stuff that I'm interested in, or seeing like a hole or a gap where I can fill it, such as like with Proof, and that being like a proof of concept festival. Like there is no really like proof of concept festival, where it's just short films that want to be either feature films or like a pilot for like a series or something. there was no space like dedicated to that. And I found that out through like talking to filmmakers, talking to people, and doing like a lot of research. And now we're doing it. So
Oh, wow.
lots of research for like drilling down into the niches and just like rabbit holes.
Absolutely. So for those people who don't know, what is a proof of concept used for in the film industry?
Yeah. So sometimes people will make a short film and it's like a small version of a bigger thing that they want to make, just to show their
Okay.
directorial vision, to show a little bit of the story world. So let's say it's like Whiplash is a good example. Whiplash from Damien Chazelle. That was a short film before it was a feature. And it was mostly because he could not get funding to make the feature film version of Whiplash. And so he's like, fine, I will make a short film and submit it to all these festivals. So he made the short film version of it, which is really like a scene within Whiplash. Kind of like took a piece of the script and filmed it, and it worked really well on its own by a short. But it was also a bigger piece, a smaller part of the bigger thing. And so he made that short film and got it to Sundance, and then did really well. And then financiers are like, okay, let me fund your feature. So sometimes it's what production companies and studios and stuff need to kind of like feel comfortable, especially with like a first time filmmaker or someone like new industry, to kind of like get a taste of like their vision. Thing. And you would find, or I would find, that filmmakers would make like proof of concepts and sometimes not be super plugged into Hollywood or anything. It's like, okay, I made this proof of concept. Now what? And it's not really,
what do you do with it?
Yeah, what do you do with it now? So that hole for like platforms and inroads and pathways was there. And so we're like, why don't I make a festival completely for these kinds of things? So yeah, that's a proof.
That's awesome. That's really incredible. So when is this festival happening?
Yeah, it's happening in October.
Okay.
Yes, it is like the last or second to last weekend of October. Yeah, I'm very excited.
Okay, so coming up pretty soon. That's Imani, this is really like such a cool project to not only like, I mean, it's so easy to launch the same thing that somebody else is doing in the same city, but that does lead to so much competition. And at the end of the day, like you're then fighting for almost the same resources, the same people. But to realize that there was this huge gap in, artists and cinematographers trying to get their work in front of other people, or like creating these proofs of concepts that are brilliant in their own way, but not sure what to do with them next. Are you planning to have some sort of like learning sessions with it as well in order to like give back to the community and like help them figure out what to do next with those pieces?
Yes, of course, I'm super excited about the films and like showing the films, but I'm super excited about like the panels and like master classes and
Yeah.
learning sessions and such that the public and that the filmmakers get to partake in, that we get to kind of like form. So yes, lots of like mingling and learning and professional development too.
Oh, so cool. Oh, I wish I might have to figure out when it's happening and see if I can make it to LA. I don't know. Who knows? I'm on some big nomadic adventure, so it could happen. Um, awesome. Well, our time is quickly coming to a close, so I am going to let you. I have one last question for you before I ask you how we can stay connected with you. But what advice would you give to an artist who is looking to feel more confident in their career today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like, again, leaning into like the research and the kind of stuff out there, reading about other people's paths of, reading about, I think we can all get down on each other about like, oh, Zendaya's like 22 when she's like in so many things. And she's like a millionaire. And not to like compare ourselves to people, but reading about different people's paths of like what it such as like Shonda Rhimes, Issa Rae, of like the grind and the hustle to, yes, they're now successful, but like what it took before that. Because everyone looks like an overnight success, but it's usually like 10 years and at least in the making of what they were doing behind the scenes when no one was really watching, where you can like really get inspired. Um and start thinking of like different kinds of things that you can do to even further your path. So again, like reading about other people is like, I love interviews and podcasts and articles and stuff.
Yeah. Reading other people's stories and then remembering it's not an overnight success.
Exactly. And I realize
Yeah, I love that.
you need your own path.
Yep. Full circle. All right, Imani, how can we stay in touch with you?
Yeah, follow me on Instagram. That's like the best way to get in touch with me. Imani M. Davis on Instagram. And that's all my other socials too, Twitter as well. I'm trying to get into more into film Twitter. I think that's a thing. uh, so follow me on Twitter too. And yeah, you can keep an eye out for the American Cinematheque on our socials too for stuff that we're doing there as well.
Perfect. And how can we learn more about the Proof of Concept Festival that you're putting together?
Yes, so you can go on Film Freeway and look up Proof Film Festival. That is where we're hosting all the information. There'll be like ticket and event information as it comes out there too. So just keep an eye out and sign up for the American Cinematheque's e-blasts because there'll be info there too.
Cool. I will put all those links in the show notes below. And with that, thank you so much for joining me on the show, Imani.
Thank you. This was amazing.
All right, creative. I'm hoping to get this podcast posted before this date, but I will drop a discount code actually in the show notes below for the Proof Film Festival. So if you are a filmmaker listening to this show, I do have a 25% off submissions code that Imani sent my way. So I'll drop that in the show notes. And with that being said, here's your one thing this week. I want you to dive down the rabbit hole, the research rabbit hole, as Imani said. Who are three people whose career you deeply admire? Set a timer for an hour and let yourself dive down the online rabbit hole, learning everything you can about them. Look up them or look up their stories, whether that's via social media, Google searches, ChatGPT, YouTube, etc. But once that timer goes off, I need you to exit the rabbit hole. Keeping in mind that their path is going to be different than yours, what's one experiment you could try that is inspired by your research? All right, if you're enjoying this show, creative, do be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. It's the #1 way you can send me some love. And until the next time, stay creative.